I think English poetry definitely needed Chinese poetry in 1915 because there was an existing poetic language that the modernists were not satisfied with in English. They wanted something else, but you don't just sort of ping pong go out stepping on the void. You have to have some kind of a model, something to learn from. And Chinese poetry provided that. It's very interesting that Pound found this particular language to translate it in. He was relying on Fenollosa's notebooks, of course. He couldn't read Chinese himself. Fenollosa couldn't really read Chinese. He had Japanese friends who helped him translate, but he knew that there was something of enormous value there. And he tried to translate it. And Fenollosa's translations are just dreadful. They're very Victorian. And the meter is always da 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 da. It's a very monotonous, mechanical sort of meter. And Pound didn't stop at that. He didn't say, okay, Fenollosa told me what Chinese poetry is like, and I don't like that, so I'll go looking for something else. He saw what he could do with it. He rendered it into a different meter that's very irregular, very spontaneous. You chose words that were less flowery than Fenollosa did. We all recognize that Pound got his knowledge of Chinese poetry through Fenollosa. But one thing that you see when you're looking at the manuscripts is how much Pound changed what he found. That's the thing that has really come to influence English poetry. We're going on over 100 years since Pound published Cathay and the Chinese written character as a medium for poetry. And those are still enormously influential collections. If you think of who was big in the world of English language poetry around that time, there's Eliot, there's Stevens, there's Marianne Moore. But I think Pound is the one whose way of writing poetry has most influenced the later people. Maybe Moore and Stevens and Eliot are too individual or too associated with particular intellectual trends that are maybe not so current now. But Pound somehow, and of course there's a lot to object to in Pound, but Pound somehow gave the example that continues to be the way that we write modernist poetry in English. So love him or hate him, Ezra Pound is part of our landscape. You can ask poets who don't know a word of Chinese if they would please write an imitation of Chinese poetry. They'll know exactly what you mean, because it has become one of the available styles, which was absolutely not the case for people in 1890, let's say. I think what Pound did is to invent a language in which Chinese poetry could be itself in English, because translating is never just about getting the meaning, but it's also creating some kind of a style of expression that corresponds to something that the hearers want to hear.